bring some of Daddy Janki's wisdom. I was in Mount Abu in March, and March is also when we have the second anniversary of Daddy's passing away. And so it gave a good opportunity to really just reflect on her wisdom. And Daddy Janki always, especially I would say the last 10, 15 years, she really emphasized three things that are left as a very powerful memorial of her legacy. Daddy spoke very deeply about honesty. And she saw honesty as a basis for living a very truthful life. And, honesty is really in some ways that kind of an internal checking of the self, always keeping that eye of attention on the self. I remember one story where there was some sister who was traveling with Daddy, and someone else phoned and they were upset with Daddy, and they said a few things about why they were upset with Daddy. And once the person was off the call, the other sister looked at her like completely surprised. Can you actually say these things to Daddy? And Daddy just smiled and said, oh, when we become perfect, then these things won't happen. And so she never looked at the other to say, oh, this one is being immature, this one is being negative or anything like that. All Daddy did was she kept the mirror on herself. Where is it that I have to refine myself further? Where is it that I need to shift inside of me further? And I liked what it's in a way that when I keep that lens internally focused, then what would happen is that, number one, I don't blame anyone. But number two as well, that if I align myself with my deeper values and principles and my conscience is clear, then I remain unaffected. So that honesty of always checking the self and keep refining the self. It's an internal exploration. And the second lesson that Daddy would always remind us of was the lesson of cleanliness. And when I was, exploring this aspect of cleanliness, it's really that clean the heart out. And I feel it's very important to do that because things get accumulated in us very, very easily. And it's little things that sits inside. And if we don't clean it out, it eventually builds up into something a lot more deeper. So that was, her second lesson of cleanliness. And for me, cleanliness is very connected with emotions and feelings and making sure that is cleansed out, that is cleared out, and that I hold inside of me an internal space that's light and that's free. And the result of these two, honesty and cleanliness, is her third legacy, and that is simplicity. And, Daddy used to sometimes say, my dress is a simple white dress. My pockets are empty, but I feel like I'm the empress of the world, And she used to say that with such intoxication. I still have such a clear memory of when she used to say that. And really that was it. A deep simplicity. And it was a simplicity in thinking, a simplicity in lifestyle, a simplicity in just the way she dealt with everything, with people, in her own situations, etc. So I always like coming back to these three particular qualities that Daddy always speaks about, and has left as a powerful memorial for all of us. So before I jump into today's lesson from Daddy's book, The Companion of God, she really loved the title of this book, and it used to really create a lot of intoxication for her. And this whole thing of um, what is the state of consciousness I need to maintain to be a companion of God. We tend to relate to God very much from the perspective of um, um, me receiving from that source. But when you think of this relationship of companion, a companion almost in a way that, what do I have to fine tune in myself so that I become on par? Because companions are always on par with each other, they're equal to each other. They're unique and different, but yet they resonate with their energy. So what is the level of consciousness I need to create within myself so that I am on par with God, that I can relate to God as a companion and take sustenance from that aspect? So yeah, before I jump into what we're going to explore today, and today's theme is around problem solving, I want us just to take a moment and just become still and just go inside ourselves and reconnect with that internal space of silence, my central core. And when I am in this central core within my being, just to allow the self to feel calm and still. And with that calmness and stillness, also just to give the self that space of entering this moment with clarity, entering this moment like a clean slate, and just being present for the gifts that are going to be offered for today. So breathe in deeply and breathe out, relax, and just feel light, clear, and free. Okay, great. So now that we're all present together, I'm going to read the little extract from Companion of God, and then we can explore it further. And as you listen to it, you can jot it down, lines that trigger something for you. And yes, if there's a question that comes up or comment that you would also like to take up, feel free with that. So today's theme, as I said, from Companion of God, is on problem solving. And Daddy says here, the trick to problem solving is to get to the root of a problem before it even shows up. This requires virtues such as objectivity, clarity, and honesty. Because the solution to all problems is truth. Truth means your spirituality. That is your essence. The way something is before attitudes and opinions are added. I like that. I'm going to read that again. Truth means your spirituality, that is your essence. The way something is before attitudes and opinions are added. This truth will bring you closer to God, and His pure influence will allow you to perceive the essence of any problem easily. Working on a problem at the level of its essence is a very beautiful experience. This beauty has a transformative effect, not just on you and the problem, but also on the ones who cause the problems. Every day, you should ask yourself how much you have thought of yourself in your essential form, that is, as a spiritual being, an eternal child of the divine. This is the method to increase not just your awareness, but your spiritual beauty as well. This makes problem solving easy. Daddy always makes things sound so easy. But I liked this aspect of really coming back to my essence. And, very often when we look at it, situations will always occur. But usually what happens is that my perception of that situation is often covered up, number one, by emotions, because the situation triggers a feeling inside of me. So the emotion gets triggered. Sometimes we are good in not really expressing the emotion, but yet the emotion gets stirred up inside. And as a result of the emotion getting stirred up, what tends to happen is we don't see things as they are. We see things as we're feeling in that moment. So if something triggers an emotion of fear, for example, then we're seeing the things in an exaggerated way. And so it becomes dangerous. It becomes terrible. It becomes, a big issue. So we lose perspective the moment we begin to see things through the lens of our emotion. We lose that objectivity. And so when Daddy's saying we need objectivity, and we need honesty, and we need clarity, the first thing that we need to begin to do is come back to my own center of peace. Come back to an internal state of neutrality, almost in a way. Just breathe and calm down. Before you think of reacting, before you think of assessing the situation as well, just come back and become calm. And that then helps to create that kind of clarity that we need. But also it helps us to have a much more broader perspective on a situation rather than a narrow perspective, because our emotions very often narrows our perspectives. And when the perspective gets narrowed, then we see things only in one way. And usually we think, that it's because it's only one way, we are blocked from actually hearing input from others, but we are also blocked from seeing opportunity for a solution that can be quite useful and meaningful. So this first practice I find is important. Breathe and just center yourself. Just become, return to that essence of peace in yourself. So that's calming down the emotions and bringing yourself to a point of neutrality. That will offer objectivity that will offer clarity. The second thing that she raised, which was important, that if you want to see things for what they really are, from a place of truthfulness, then she said, also become free from your attitudes. Now, attitudes are a little bit more subtle. And how are attitudes actually created? I find that we've had a certain pattern of thinking that has become our deeper belief system. And that belief system then becomes a subtle attitude. And again, like our attitudes create a vibration around us. So very often when we need to face a situation, what tends to happen, because we influenced by an attitude, already our vibration is communicating something through. And if our attitude is not positive, it's not clean, it's not open, it's not inclusive, whatever, what then happens is that my vibration is already projecting something. And as a result of that projection, others around me become defensive. Others around me close in. Others around me then begin to wanting to react as well. So even if I don't say anything, but my vibration is already creating a reaction from others. And then what happens is it's very difficult then to actually find a solution that that everyone begins to feel this is the way going forward. And as Daddy puts it very clearly, that when we, take out this emotion and attitudes and become neutral, become peaceful, see things for what they are, it's very obvious what the solution is. Very often it's like what muddles up a situation are the emotions and attitudes that are at play. But when we calm those energies down in a way, it becomes clear, it becomes obvious what the path going forward is. So I find that that is one aspect that is very important, and to always come back to this practice. And as I said, the first practice is become calm, become quiet inside. And how do I know that my emotions have been triggered off, or my attitudes have been triggering off here? Is that my mind becomes very busy. Many times I've noticed for myself as well, is that what we tend to do is we trying to work out the problem in our heads. And so it becomes very noisy in the mind. But if we just calm down and become still, it's like the solution will surface to the top of our mind. We don't have to work it out and use so much of energy in processing and analyzing, which we tend to do. But it's like the solution surfaces to the top. It becomes clear. And I liked what Daddy said as well, that not only does it help me in a sense to create this level of clarity that's needed, but that I can begin to impact those around me as well. When I stay calm, then I help the other to become calm. And then what happens is that we can begin to see, the situation for what it is. There are times that, others won't become calm, become agitated. And that's when I find that it's best then just to give space, just to remain quiet and to let that energy work itself out of the other, until there's a space that's created where there can be an opportunity for engagement that's coming from a more mature space, that's coming from a more a space of deeper spirituality. So just as Daddy was saying, come back to this level of internal clarity. And so this practice is important. I think the other aspect as well is always to know that it's always, problems are really just when there's mixture. And I liked what she said, that when we come back to truth, then, that's what resolves all problems in a way. So in a way also to know that usually what is happening that creates the issues around is really that our egos end up clashing. My ego is trying to convince your ego, and it doesn't work, so it just becomes a greater entanglement. But the more that I then begin to practice soul consciousness, and there's a lovely expression that I heard, which I always remind myself, because one of the things of the ego is the ego always thinks it's right. And the ego always wants to prove itself right. But, this expression I heard, which I really like, is that it's more important to be kind than to be right. And I really like that, because ego forgets the humanity, its own humanity and the humanity of the other, in the pursuit of wanting to be right, in the pursuit to defend its own position, in the pursuit of trying to protect its own power base or its influence. But all of these things are never permanent. And at the end of the day, I may gain a small victory in that situation, but I become emptier spiritually, because a victory for my ego empties me spiritually further. And therefore, there will always be a craving for more and more and more, and a greater aggressiveness that grows to try and claim that victory more and more and more. But internally, at the level of spirit, I become emptier and emptier and emptier. And so I always find to step back and ask myself, what is the victory that I'm seeking in this moment? Is it the victory over me proving myself? Or is it a victory that me staying firm on my principles which I have gathered for myself, that I've reflected on, principles of nonviolence, principles of love, principles of transparency and honesty, principles of being content. So to know, what am I in this moment feeding myself with? And so when I come back to my own truth, and as Daddy has highlighted, come back to your spiritual essence, to your own spirituality, and just looking at it, that what does my spirituality mean? What does it mean, my spiritual essence? And that's where I really like to see for myself, in a way, that it is really about coming back to principles within me that I find are important, and a couple of things is that state of cleanliness and purity, not to hold agenda, that state of compassion, that internal energy, because compassion connects me with my humanity. It's what makes me feel that sense that it activates my divine nature, because we have that potential, but so often we block that potential, and it is the ego that blocks that potential. So it's almost like moving from the ego consciousness. The next I come back to the opposite is my divinity. And to activate my divinity, that's where this practice of really coming back to seeing myself as a soul. And not only just that I'm a soul, I'm consciousness, but that what is the true energy of this consciousness, coming back to that again and again, reminding myself of that, and really like activating it inside of me. So a lovely practice, we had these brothers from Mauritius, and I had a lovely opportunity of just sharing some time with them. And the second practice that I'd like to leave you with today, and that is really about activating my spirituality in that sense, is this whole practice of really just taking moments where I remind myself I am a soul. And then the second thought that I sort of take as a companion thought to that thought is really that what I would like to open up or strengthen in my inner nature, that I connect as with my inner truth. So, for example, I would like, for me, contentment is an important quality. So I would like to, activate that energy even more. And I'd say, I am a soul, I am a being that is content, that is full, that has a sense of abundance within me. So I'm not wanting of people, wanting of situations, wanting of things, but there's a kind of a fullness, and it is with that fullness that I wish to engage with the world around me. So a good practice in my day, just activate that spiritual energy that you want to strengthen within yourself. Because that is what it means, returning to my spirituality, returning back to the qualities that I know that I want to identify with as my nature. Not just that I know that it's a nice quality, that contentment's good, or love is good, or peace is good, or whatever, but it's not just that theoretical awareness of it, but it's something I want to activate as an energy that begins to filter through my vision, my attitudes, and of course, my consciousness. And so it comes through my words as well. So these two practices today, one is that when you're faced with any situation, before you begin to dive in to say, now how do we do it? How do we solve this issue? Just first come back to your own center of peace. Breathe and just remind yourself, I'm peace. Come back to feeling neutral and calm internally. And do that often, the more often you do this, you're at a traffic light, come back to your center of peace. Your telephone's ringing, just take a moment, become peaceful before you answer that phone. You're going to take a sip of water, again, take that moment, breathe, center yourself, and then take a sip of that water. The more you create that practice, the more it's something you will naturally default to when you're faced with a situation. So begin that as a practice. Make it conscious. And the second thing is also look at yourself and see what you want to activate in yourself. Use that as something that you begin in your morning meditation and also your evening meditation. But just really, what is it? What's the energy in me that I want to activate? Because that is what it means to return to your spiritual core, to your truth. And when you return to your core truth, then as Daddy says, it will be very clear what you need to do as a solution for going forward. So those were some of my thoughts for this morning on this particular theme that Daddy raised on problem solving. And I'd like to leave a bit of space if anyone has any comment or question or anything of that sort. You're welcome to unmute yourself and share, or if you prefer, you could even put it in the chat. But yeah, a question or comment will be a good welcome.
Good morning, Sister Pratibha.
Yes, good
Can
morning.
you hear me? Could you run over that piece where you spoke about vibration and becoming defensive? How does the vibration come about again?
Your attitude. It's your attitude that creates your vibration. And so what happens is that even if I don't say something, but my attitude got triggered, then what would happen is that that is what the other would feel, my vibration, because of my attitude. Yeah. So sometimes you can say the right words, but you don't get the response that you're expecting, and it's because your attitude is saying something else. And so people don't feel that congruency from you. And therefore there's a reaction or there's a defensiveness that emerges. Okay, anyone else?
Could I ask something else? Okay, so could it be that one, you send out a vibration and the people on the other side feel very good, but you don't feel very good about yourself? You don't see what they're seeing. They're looking at you. They're seeing something that makes them feel good, but you don't feel good. Is that you don't feel what they're feeling about yourself? They're looking at you like you, a goddess or whatever. But you don't feel like a goddess.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Carol. I think what we need to just do is we can't really control or trigger what others are going to think and feel, whether it's positive or negative. I think for me, always the attention is that let me just work on myself, and my feelings are my mirror. So if I'm not feeling great, then I need to say, okay, why am I not feeling great? And what is it that I need to shift? If people are having a positive energy or attitude towards me and they are sensing something positive, well, that's great. But at the end of the day, my lens must always be turned towards myself and to see what I need to do internally for myself. Because if I depend on people having a positive feel or response to me, I can sometimes end up becoming dependent on that. And when they don't, then it can throw me into upheaval. So if people are having positive attitudes or positive feelings or whatever, great. But my focus must always be myself. Okay, right. So if there isn't anyone else with further questions, okay, yes, someone has come up. I shared some information on one WhatsApp group indicating that we often have problems because we look at the external world, what other people have that we don't have, and develop resentfulness, and jealousy. Yeah, that's a very good point in a way. It's true. When my focus is outside and it triggers comparison, and that's all because I'm not feeling full inside. And that's why I have shared with you this practice of really looking at myself and seeing what I need to activate inside of me in terms of my internal qualities, so that it's not just something I aspire towards, but I need to generate it as an experience internally by keep affirming that as my deeper reality. Because when I feel full inside, then I don't even what I see those around me, it won't create jealousy or resentfulness because I'm full inside. You know, we only react negatively because we empty inside. But the more we develop this practice of generating this awareness and experience with that awareness of what we want to feel inside and let it become our internal nature, then we won't react to others negatively. There's a feeling of celebration rather than comparison. Okay, so lots to look at and to work through. If there isn't anyone else, then I'd like to end off this morning with a short meditation. Okay, so let's take a moment again, breathing in deeply and just center myself in my own experience of peace. I remind myself that I am a being of peace. I am a divine consciousness. I am a child of God. As I rest my consciousness in this awareness, it invokes in me a deep feeling of being secure, of being at peace, of being full. So I just hold that awareness and enjoy this deeper experience of stillness, this deeper experience of knowing I'm light, I'm eternal, I am created with internal treasures of love, of courage, of wisdom, of compassion. So just resting my mind on the treasures that God has given me. These beautiful qualities and allowing myself to go into the feeling of compassion. Feel the power, the generosity of spirit, the openness of the heart, and yet underlining that openness is a deep strength, a stability. So keeping this awareness and enjoying the power of this awareness. I just keep myself still for a few minutes and absorb and feel this energy penetrating within me, and feel myself being close to God, who is my companion in this very special journey. Om Shanti. So, Om Shanti, everyone, and have a beautiful day today and a beautiful weekend ahead. And yes, carry this consciousness with you of who you really are, your spiritual values, and enjoy this practice of coming back to your center again and again. Thank you, and Om Shanti. Bye-bye.